The sun bathed the world in golden light, a soft radiance that made every blade of grass seem alive. Rivers sparkled like liquid silver, winding their way through lush valleys. The air was rich with the scent of blooming flowers and ripe fruit, a land untouched by cruelty or decay. And this time, humanity walked with open hearts, their faces unlined by sorrow, their voices carrying songs of gratitude that rose into the heavens. The world was perfect, untouched by the shadows that would one day creep over its beauty. In this era, the earth sang in harmony. Mountains stood tall as witnesses to the ancient bond between heaven and earth, their peaks kissed by clouds. Forests teemed with life, animals moving freely without fear of one another. The seas, calm and clear, mirrored the skies above, holding secrets only known to the Creator. It was a time of balance, when humans and the divine were connected like branches to a tree, their roots shared in sacred soil. Among these people, there was one man whose heart burned brighter than the rest. Enoch. A man of quiet strength, whose soul seemed to hum with the whispers of heaven itself. He was not mighty in the way others thought of might. His hands were not calloused from battle, nor was his voice one to command nations. But his gaze held a gentleness that could calm storms in the heart, and his steps left peace in their wake. He lived simply, but there was nothing ordinary about him. The people spoke of Enoch with awe. They said he could hear the wind carry the prayers of the earth, that his very breath was in rhythm with the Creator's heartbeat. Children would run to his side, seeking his stories of the stars, of the great harmony that bound all things together. Elders would seek his wisdom, for even they, wise as they were, felt small in his presence, as though he carried within him truths too vast for words. But Enoch did not think himself special. He rose with the sun and worked with his hands like any other. He sowed seeds in the earth and watched them grow, always marveling at the miracle of life. His days were filled with quiet devotion, his prayers woven into every action, every breath. He would stand in the fields, his face turned upward, his eyes closed, as though listening to something only he could hear. It was in these moments that the heavens seemed to reach out to him. The skies would grow still, the wind brushing against his face like a gentle hand. It was as though the world itself paused, waiting. He felt it then, the weight of something vast and unknowable, settling on his shoulders. It wasn't a burden, but a calling, one he didn't yet fully understand. There was a peace in Enoch's world, but beneath it, a fragile tension. Humans, blessed with freedom, had begun to stray. Some looked to the Watchers, those heavenly beings who once served as guides, now walking among them, offering gifts that glittered but carried hidden thorns. Knowledge was given too soon, too recklessly. The balance that held the world together trembled, and though many were blind to it, Enoch felt it like a shadow creeping across his soul. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fire and rose, Enoch stood at the edge of a great river. The water whispered as it passed, the sound like a song only he could hear. He knelt, his hands skimming the surface, and a chill ran through him, though the night was warm. He closed his eyes, and the vision came. It was not the first, but it was the clearest. A world in chaos. Flames licking at the edges of the earth. Giants, their laughter shaking the heavens, their hands stained with blood. Humanity, torn from its connection to the divine, lost in greed and violence. He saw the Watchers, their faces filled with regret and fury, chained in shadow. And above it all, a great wave, rising higher and higher, roaring with the voice of judgment. Enoch gasped, his breath catching in his throat. His heart thundered, but he did not look away. He could not. The vision passed, and when he opened his eyes, tears streamed down his face, though he didn't remember crying. The river continued its song, unbothered, as though it hadn't just shown him the end of everything he held dear. He stood there, trembling, and for the first time, he spoke aloud to the heavens. His voice was steady despite the storm inside him. "What would you have me do?" The response was not in words, but in the stillness that surrounded him, a quiet assurance that filled him with both fear and peace. He understood then, though he couldn't yet say how, that he had been chosen. Not for greatness, not for glory, but to bear witness. To see what others refused to see, and to speak what others would not dare. The stars above flickered like 1,000 watching eyes, their light falling on him as though marking him for a task yet to come. The world, for all its beauty, was on the edge of something vast and terrible, and Enoch, the humble man with a heart tuned to the divine, would be its voice. The night grew colder, the grass beneath his feet damp with dew. But Enoch didn't move. He stood there, staring into the darkness, his heart heavy yet calm. Somewhere in that darkness, a great plan was unfolding, and though he didn't know his part in it yet, he knew this: the world would never be the same. And neither would he. The wind howled over the rugged peaks of Mount Hermon, carrying with it a strange, electric charge. The mountain stood like a silent sentinel, its craggy face bathed in moonlight, its shadows deep and haunting. It was a place of mystery, a place that seemed to hold its breath as if waiting for something monumental to unfold. And then, it happened. The night sky, vast and infinite, began to shimmer. Stars blinked like watchful eyes, and the air grew heavy, trembling as though it could barely contain what was coming. A brilliance broke through the heavens, not like the gentle light of the moon, but a fierce, blinding radiance that pierced the night. Shapes descended, their forms glowing like embers in the darkness. They were beautiful, terribly, heartbreakingly beautiful. Their faces shone with a light that seemed too pure for this world, and their wings, vast and gleaming, stretched behind them, stirring the air with an almost imperceptible hum. These were the Watchers, beings of divine origin, once guardians of the earth, sent to guide and protect. But tonight, their descent was not one of purpose, but of rebellion. Their leader, Samiaza, landed first. His presence was commanding, his gaze burning with a mix of determination and sorrow. He was not the tallest among them, nor the most imposing, but there was something in the way he carried himself, an unyielding fire that drew others to him. He stood atop the mountain, looking out over the world below, his face a mask of resolve. Behind him, one by one, the others landed. Azazel, whose eyes gleamed with dangerous curiosity. Kokobeel, who always seemed to carry the weight of the stars in his gaze. And many more, each bearing their own silent torment, their own reasons for abandoning the heavens. For a moment, they stood in silence. The air around them seemed to shimmer, as if recoiling from their presence. These were beings who had walked in the presence of the Creator, who had sung the songs of eternity. And now, they were here, on this mountain, their wings heavy with the weight of their choice. Samiaza's voice broke the stillness, deep and resonant, carrying both authority and a hint of sadness. "Brothers," he began, his words cutting through the night like a blade. "We have watched for too long. Watched as humans struggle, as they toil, blind to the gifts we could bestow upon them. Watched as their world falters, while we remain chained by rules that no longer serve the greater good." There was a murmur among the others, a ripple of agreement that moved like a current through the group. Samiaza's words echoed what they had all felt, a frustration that had festered over centuries. They had been sent to watch, to observe, but not to intervene. And yet, how could they stand by, silent and idle, when they possessed knowledge that could elevate humanity, could make their lives richer, brighter, and more fulfilled? Azazel stepped forward, his expression fierce. "Is it wrong to love them?" he demanded, his voice sharp with emotion. "To see their beauty, their potential, and want to help them rise? We are not betraying our purpose, we are fulfilling it in a way the heavens refuse to understand." There were nods, murmurs of agreement growing louder. The tension in the air thickened, charged with their shared defiance. They were no longer simply rebelling against orders, they were claiming a new purpose, one they believed was just and noble. But beneath their words, there was something else, something unspoken. It wasn't just love for humanity that had drawn them down from the heavens. It was the pull of desire, the allure of the forbidden. They had seen human women, their grace, their beauty, their laughter, and it had stirred something deep within them, something they could not suppress. They were angels, yes, but they were not immune to longing. Samiaza's voice rose again, steady and commanding. "We are bound together in this. What we do cannot be undone. If any of you waver, now is the time to turn back. But know this, if we go forward, we must stand as one. For we will be judged as one. For a moment, silence. The kind of silence that feels alive, heavy with the weight of a decision that would ripple through eternity. And then, one by one, they stepped forward, placing their hands over their hearts, their faces resolute. They had made their choice. Samayaza nodded, a flicker of something, pride, sorrow, or perhaps both, crossing his face. Then let it be done. They moved as one, their wings folding behind them, their forms dimming until they no longer glowed. They looked almost human now, their divine essence subdued, but still palpable. They descended further down the mountain, their footsteps steady, their resolve unshaken. As they reached the base, the world seemed to shift around them. The air grew warmer, the sounds of the earth louder. They had crossed a threshold, one that could never be uncrossed. The Watchers were no longer beings of the heavens. They were of the earth now, bound to it in ways they had not fully understood when they made their choice. The stars above seemed to flicker, as if watching, as if mourning. The mountain, once silent, now seemed to hum with an eerie vibration, as though it too understood the weight of what had just occurred. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of the heavens, there was a cry, a soundless, wordless lament for what had been lost. But the Watchers did not look back. They had turned their faces to the earth, to the world of humans they had chosen to embrace. And in doing so, they had set in motion events that would forever change the course of history, of heaven and earth alike. The firelight danced in the darkness, casting flickering shadows across the faces of those gathered around it. There was a strange energy in the air, one that set hearts racing and stirred whispers among the crowd. A figure stepped forward, his presence commanding, his hands filled with something that caught the light and gleamed like the stars themselves. It was Azazel, one of the Watchers, and in his hands lay the gift that would change everything. Metal. Cold, unyielding, yet malleable under the right hands. Azazel's voice rang out, steady and persuasive, as he showed the people how to shape it into tools, into ornaments, and, most strikingly, into weapons. The first blade was forged that night, a sleek, sharp thing that seemed to hum with potential. The people marveled, their eyes wide with wonder, as Azazel explained how this knowledge would give them strength, how it would allow them to protect themselves, to rise above their enemies. But the blade, so gleaming and beautiful, carried a weight they couldn't yet comprehend. It was more than a tool, it was a seed, one that would take root and grow into something far darker. Elsewhere, another Watcher, Pinemu, sat with a group of women. His hands moved gracefully as he traced symbols into the dirt, his voice soft yet magnetic. He was teaching them the secrets of writing, how to inscribe their thoughts, their stories, their desires. The women leaned in, captivated, unaware of the subtle shift that had begun to take place. Words, once sacred and pure, became tools for manipulation, for deception, for power. The teaching spread like wildfire. Kokobel revealed the movements of the stars, showing how the heavens could predict seasons and guide the sowing and harvesting of crops. But soon, those same stars were turned to other purposes, their patterns used to weave false prophecies and bind the hearts of men with superstition. And then there was the beauty. Oh, the beauty. The Watcher known as Shamshiel introduced the art of adornment, teaching women how to mix crushed minerals into pigments that enhanced their features. Faces became radiant, lips stained like ripe berries, eyes lined with kohl to deepen their gaze. It was intoxicating, the power that came with beauty, but it also awakened something darker, envy, pride, and a hunger for more. The people drank deeply from the gifts of the Watchers, their lives transformed almost overnight. Villages grew into bustling towns. Tools made work easier, while weapons ensured dominance over others. Stories were no longer spoken in hushed reverence but scrawled onto surfaces for all to see, spreading influence like ripples in a pond. At first, it seemed like a golden age. There was prosperity, there was power, there was knowledge. But with the gifts came corruption. The first blood spilled from the edge of a forged blade was like a crack in a dam. It was over something small, a quarrel over land, a slighted honor, but when the blade sank into flesh, it unleashed something primal, something impossible to contain. Violence became a language, one that spread faster than the teachings that had birthed it. Fields that once blossomed with crops were now stained with the blood of those who fought over them. In the growing cities, adorned women walked with confidence, their beauty unmatched, their power undeniable. But their faces, painted and perfect, began to mask hearts filled with jealousy and deceit. Friend turned against friend, sister against sister, each seeking to outshine the other. And the men, enthralled by the beauty they beheld, fell into madness, driven to acts of cruelty to claim what they could not have. The knowledge of sorcery, whispered in shadows by other watchers, brought a power that was both mesmerizing and destructive. Rituals were performed in secret, drawing on the energies of the earth, the stars, and the unseen. At first, it was used to heal, to bless, to call rain for parched lands. But it didn't take long for sorcery to twist into something else entirely. The spells grew darker, fueled by greed and hatred, aimed not at preserving life, but at taking it. Even the watchers began to change. The light that once radiated from them seemed dimmer now, as though the weight of their choices was pulling them further from their origins. They walked among the people they had once sought to uplift, and yet, in their hearts, they felt an emptiness, a gnawing ache they couldn't name. They had given so much, shared so much, and yet they had taken something in return, the innocence of humanity. Samayaza, their leader, watched it all with a heavy heart. He had envisioned a world where humanity would rise, where they would stand as equals with the divine. But this was not what he had intended. The gifts, so full of promise, had become chains, binding humanity to a fate of their own making. He saw the greed in their eyes, the hunger in their hearts, and he knew they had inherited it from him and his brothers. And still, the people begged for more. They saw the Watchers as gods, their bringers of light and power, and they wanted more knowledge, more beauty, more control. The Watchers, now entangled in their own rebellion, could not refuse. The earth itself seemed to groan under the weight of the changes. Where once there had been harmony, now there was discord. The animals grew restless, their instincts sensing the unnatural shift. The rivers, once clear, now carried the echoes of sorrow and rage. Even the skies seemed darker, the stars colder, as though the heavens themselves were turning away from the world below. And yet, amid the chaos, there were moments of haunting beauty. A mother holding a blade, not to harm but to protect her child. A woman adorned with shimmering pigments, her laughter like music in the streets. A young man staring at the stars, tracing patterns taught to him by the Watchers, dreaming of a future he would never see. These were the gifts. And this was the cost. The cries of a newborn echoed through the stillness of the night, but this was no ordinary sound. It was sharper, louder, resonating with a power that unsettled even the stars above. The child, cradled in its mother's trembling arms, was enormous, its limbs thick with unnatural strength, its eyes gleaming with an eerie, otherworldly light. There was no celebration, no joy, only a heavy silence as the Watchers looked on, their expressions unreadable. This was their offspring, the Nephilim, and the earth would never be the same again. At first, there was awe. The Nephilim were magnificent in their might, towering over humans, their forms almost godlike. They walked the earth with an air of invincibility, their footsteps shaking the ground, their voices deep and commanding. Wherever they went, people stopped to stare, caught between reverence and fear. These were the children of angels, beings born of heaven and earth, and their presence alone was a testament to the forbidden union that had brought them forth. But their power was more than just physical. It radiated from them like a storm, wild and uncontained. They could break boulders with a single blow, uproot trees as though they were mere twigs. The earth bent beneath their might, and for a time, it seemed as though they were destined to rule over all. However, their strength came with an insatiable hunger. The Nephilim consumed far more than human bodies were ever meant to sustain. Crops that once fed entire villages were devoured in days. Herds of cattle disappeared overnight. The people, already strained by the rapid changes brought by the Watchers, began to suffer. Families went hungry, their children's cries filling the air as the Nephilim gorged themselves without thought or care. Their appetites extended beyond food. The Nephilim, fueled by their unnatural lineage, were prone to fits of rage that left devastation in their wake. If a dispute arose, it did not end in words but in blood. Fields were trampled, homes reduced to rubble, entire communities wiped out in a single night of fury. The humans, once proud and resilient, found themselves powerless against these giants. The mothers of the Nephilim, the women who had borne them, often looked on in despair. They had carried these beings within them, had felt their movements, their first cries. But the children they had nursed with love grew into creatures they could no longer recognize. These women watched in silence as their sons tore the world apart, their hearts heavy with guilt and loss. The watchers themselves were not spared from the consequences of their choices. They had loved these women, had shared their knowledge and their hearts, and now they saw the fruit of their unions wreaking havoc on the earth. Samayaza stood on a high ridge, his face grim as he watched a group of Nephilim lay waste to a village below. Flames licked at the sky, and the screams of the innocent carried on the wind. His brothers stood beside him, their wings drooping, their once radiant forms dimmed with sorrow. "We did this," Azazel whispered, his voice barely audible. He looked at the destruction below, his eyes filled with something that might have been regret, or something darker. "We gave them this power. We gave them everything. But there was no undoing it. The Nephilim had become a force of their own, and their destruction spread like a plague. Rivers ran red with blood. Forests, once vibrant and full of life, became silent and barren. Even the animals, once harmonious with humanity, grew restless and wild, as though they too sensed the imbalance. The Nephilim themselves were not immune to suffering. Their immense strength and power came at a cost. They were restless, unable to find peace in a world too small to contain them. Their hearts burned with a rage they couldn't explain, a longing for something they couldn't name. Some turned on one another, their battles shaking the earth like thunder. The sky seemed to darken whenever they fought, as though the heavens themselves mourned the chaos. There were stories whispered among the humans, of Nephilim who showed moments of mercy, of tenderness. A giant who wept beside a ruined village, his tears carving rivers into the soil. Another who shielded a child from the wrath of his brothers, cradling the tiny form in his massive hands before vanishing into the wilderness. But these moments were fleeting, swallowed by the shadow of their overwhelming destruction. The earth, once a place of harmony and beauty, was now scarred and broken. The balance that had once tied heaven and earth together was shattered, and the people lived in constant fear. At night, they huddled in caves or beneath the twisted remains of their homes, praying for a morning that might bring peace. The Nephilim, those giants born of rebellion and desire, continued their march across the land, their shadows long and dark. Their laughter was hollow, their joy fleeting, for they too were trapped in the consequences of their creation. They were beings out of place, caught between the heavens and the earth, and their very existence was a reminder of the price that had been paid. And yet, somewhere in the depths of the chaos, there lingered a faint, almost imperceptible whisper. It was the earth itself, groaning under the weight of its suffering, sending its silent plea to the heavens. A plea for restoration. A plea for an end. The night was still, but it carried a weight that pressed against the soul. Stars flickered dimly, veiled by a heavy, restless sky. Enoch stood alone on the ridge, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The earth below lay scarred, its harmony shattered, its cries echoing through the silence. He could feel it, the pulse of something vast and unnameable, a presence that seemed to stretch beyond the limits of the mortal world. And then it came. A voice, not heard but felt, reverberated through him like a thunderclap in his chest. It was neither gentle nor harsh, but absolute, a force that silenced every thought and stilled every breath. Enoch, the name rang through his being, not just as a call, but as a command, a thread pulling him toward something far beyond his understanding. The air shifted, growing charged with an energy unlike anything he had ever known. His knees buckled beneath him, and he fell, his hands clutching the earth as though it might anchor him. But the world itself seemed to fall away, dissolving into a sea of light that burned without consuming. It was overwhelming, terrifying, yet strangely familiar, as though he had been waiting for this moment his entire life. The vision unfolded before him, more vivid than any dream, more real than the ground beneath his feet. He saw a great expanse of shining waters, stretching endlessly under a sky of brilliance. Mountains rose like sentinels, their peaks aflame with a radiance that blinded and comforted all at once. And there, in the midst of it all, was a throne of unearthly glory, surrounded by beings whose forms defied description. Enoch trembled, not from fear but from the sheer magnitude of what he saw. He felt the weight of countless eyes upon him, watching, waiting. He was insignificant, a speck of dust in the vastness of the cosmos, and yet, he knew he had been called. Words filled his mind, not spoken but impressed upon his very soul. They carried both sorrow and resolve, a charge that could not be refused. He was to bear witness, to record what had been and what was yet to come. He was to be a voice, a scribe, a bridge between the heavens and the earth. The enormity of it threatened to crush him, and yet, beneath the weight, there was a strange peace, a certainty that this was why he had been born. The vision shifted, and Enoch saw the earth as it was now. The Nephilim, towering and wild, raged across the lands, their destruction leaving scars that bled into rivers and plains. The watchers stood apart, their faces shadowed with regret, yet their rebellion chained them to their fate. And the humans, fragile and weary, cried out for deliverance, their prayers rising like smoke to the heavens. Enoch's heart ached as he watched, the pain of 1,000 lives coursing through him. He saw the suffering, the brokenness, the darkness that had taken hold. But amid the despair, a spark of light appeared, a flicker of hope, faint but unyielding. It grew brighter, illuminating paths that had long been hidden, casting shadows into the abyss. The light reached out to Enoch, enveloping him in its warmth. It filled him with a strength he didn't know he possessed, a resolve that steadied his trembling hands. He understood now. He was not just to observe, but to act, to carry this light into the depths of a world lost in darkness. When the vision faded, Enoch found himself kneeling once more on the ridge. The stars above seemed closer now, their light more brilliant, as though they had drawn near to witness this moment. The air was heavy with stillness, but it was no longer oppressive. It was alive, humming with the presence of the divine. He rose slowly, his body weak but his spirit unshaken. The ground beneath his feet felt solid again, but he knew he was no longer the same. He carried something within him now, a burden and a gift, a truth that could not be ignored. His heart beat with purpose, and his mind burned with the memory of what he had seen. Enoch began to walk, his steps deliberate, his eyes shining with a light that had not been there before. He felt the weight of countless generations upon him, their voices mingling with the echoes of the heavens. His hands itched to write, to inscribe what had been revealed, to preserve it for those who would come after. But his call was not only to words. He knew there was more, a path that would take him beyond the bounds of the mortal world, and to realms of glory and terror. His heart quickened at the thought, a mix of awe and trepidation. He would walk where no man had walked, see what no eyes had seen, and carry back what the earth needed most. As he descended the ridge, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying a melody that seemed to echo the voice he had heard. It was a song of sorrow and hope, of endings and beginnings, and it followed him as he made his way into the night. The stars above seemed brighter now, their patterns shifting as though aligning for something yet to come. The heavens were watching, waiting, and Enoch knew he was no longer just a man. He was a messenger, a scribe, a witness to the will of the Almighty. The world would never be the same again. The wind carried a whisper, soft yet commanding, and Enoch felt the pull before he saw anything. The night around him seemed to shift, its darkness pierced by a glow that grew brighter with each passing moment. Then, from the skies above, they came beings of light, their forms radiant and impossible to describe. They descended with a quiet majesty, their presence filling the air with a hum that resonated in Enoch's very bones. He stood motionless, awestruck as they approached. Their faces shone with a light that seemed to carry the wisdom of eternity, their eyes both fierce and kind. Without a word, one of them extended a hand toward Enoch. It was an invitation, not a command, yet Enoch felt no hesitation. He reached out, his fingers trembling as they met the angels. The moment their hands touched, the earth fell away. The ascent began gently, the ground fading into a haze of blue and gold. Enoch felt weightless, his body surrounded by a warmth that seemed to lift him higher and higher. The air grew thin and sweet, like the first breath after a storm, and the stars that had once seemed so distant now sparkled close enough to touch. As they rose, Enoch caught glimpses of landscapes that defied his understanding. There were rivers of liquid light, their currents flowing with a music so beautiful it brought tears to his eyes. Mountains of crystal stretched toward the heavens, their peaks glowing with colors he had no words for. Vast fields of silver mist shimmered under skies that pulsed with a living brilliance, and he could feel the life in every particle, as though the very air was singing. Time lost its meaning. There was no day, no night, only an endless expanse of wonder. Enoch's heart swelled as he beheld creatures unlike any he had ever imagined. Some were vast, their forms blazing like the sun, their wings spanning horizons. Others were delicate, dancing on the currents of light with a grace that seemed woven from the stars themselves. Each being radiated purpose and harmony, their presence a testament to the Creator's boundless imagination. The angel leading Enoch turned to him, its voice not spoken but felt, a resonance that filled his mind. "You are called to witness." Before Enoch could reply, the scene shifted. The light around him grew brighter, almost blinding, and he felt a great presence ahead, so vast and overwhelming that his knees buckled. He was caught before he fell, the angel's touch steadying him. "Do not fear," the voice assured him, though the sheer magnitude of what lay ahead made Enoch's heart race. The divine court came into view, and Enoch gasped. It was not a place as he had known places, but a reality unto itself, a realm where time and space seemed to bow before a greater force. A great throne stood at the center, its radiance surpassing the sun, its form both solid and intangible. Surrounding it were beings whose splendor eclipsed all Enoch had seen before. Their faces were hidden by their brilliance, their forms shifting like flames, and their voices sang in unison, a hymn of praise so pure that it brought Enoch to tears. He felt unworthy, small, and fragile in the presence of such glory. Yet, at the same time, he felt known, as though every part of him, every thought, every breath, was understood and cherished. The light from the throne reached out to him, not as a blaze, but as a gentle touch, and Enoch's trembling eased. The angel guided him closer, and he saw the rivers of light flowing from the throne, branching out like veins of life to the edges of existence. He realized they carried more than light, they carried the essence of creation itself, sustaining everything that was, is, and will be. In the presence of the throne, Enoch was shown visions that filled his mind with awe and sorrow. He saw the beauty of creation, its harmony and purpose, but he also saw its brokenness, the choices of angels and men that had brought chaos and pain. He saw the Watchers, their rebellion etched into the fabric of time, and the Nephilim, their destructive power tearing at the earth. Enoch wanted to look away, but the light held him steady, not forcing him to see but giving him the strength to bear it. He understood now why he had been called. He was not here to be overwhelmed by the majesty of heaven, but to carry its truth back to a world that had forgotten. The voices of the beings around the throne grew louder, their song shifting into words Enoch could understand. "Write," they said, their tones both commanding and compassionate. "Write what you see, what you hear, that it may be known." Enoch felt the weight of their words, but it was not a burden. It was a purpose, a fire that burned within him. He nodded, his heart steady, his resolve unshaken. As the light around him grew even brighter, Enoch felt a peace he had never known. He was not alone in this. He was part of something vast and eternal, a thread in the tapestry of creation. The angels beside him stood as witnesses, their presence a reminder that the heavens themselves were invested in the fate of the earth. The ascent slowed, and Enoch realized he was being brought back. The celestial landscapes began to fade, replaced by the familiar outlines of the world he had left behind. Yet, the vision remained vivid in his mind, its light still burning within him. He carried it now, not just as a memory but as a charge, a mission that would shape the rest of his days. The angel released his hand, and Enoch found himself standing once more on solid ground. But he was not the same man who had begun this ascent. He had walked among the heavens, stood in the presence of the divine, and seen the heart of creation. And though the earth surrounded him once more, he knew that its story was forever intertwined with the glory he had witnessed. Enoch's breath caught as the light before him grew blinding, more radiant than the sun, yet it did not scorch his eyes. His heart pounded, its rhythm syncopated with the thunderous hum that filled the air, a sound so vast it seemed to originate from the core of existence itself. The angel guiding him did not speak but gestured for him to step forward. Enoch hesitated, his body trembling, not from fear but from the sheer weight of what lay ahead. And then he saw it. The throne was not merely an object or a seat of power. It was alive, a living embodiment of majesty, surrounded by an ever-shifting brilliance that defied form and color. Fire and light danced in harmony, weaving patterns that spoke of creation itself. From the base of the throne flowed rivers of light, each strand carrying a melody so pure it seemed to stitch the universe together. The throne was not silent. Its presence resonated with a voice that filled every corner of existence. It spoke without words, a language of being that Enoch could feel in every fiber of his soul. He fell to his knees, not out of obligation but because his mortal frame could bear no more. Above the throne arched a canopy of glory, a vast expanse that shimmered with celestial hues. Beneath it, a host of beings surrounded the throne, their forms radiant yet distinct. Some stood like pillars of flame, their light reaching high into the expanse above. Others moved with a grace that defied understanding, their wings whispering songs of praise. Each being was unique, yet all moved as one, their unity a reflection of the throne's power. Enoch's gaze was drawn to their faces, or what he could perceive of them. They were shrouded in brilliance, their forms too holy to behold directly, yet their essence radiated purity and purpose. These were the cherubim, the seraphim, and the countless other ranks of the heavenly host. They did not simply serve, they embodied the order and harmony of the heavens. From the throne came flashes of light, each pulse carrying a decree, a truth that rippled through the celestial assembly. Enoch felt the weight of those proclamations, their authority unchallenged. Yet within the power, there was a profound gentleness, a mercy that balanced the throne's might. He saw the scrolls, the great, eternal records carried by beings with faces that shone like the dawn. These scrolls contained the names, deeds, and hearts of all creation. They were not written in ink or carved in stone but etched into the fabric of existence itself. Enoch felt his own name resonate within those scrolls, a faint echo that reminded him of his place in this vast order. The throne spoke again, not in words but in a presence that filled the air. Enoch could feel the judgments being pronounced, each one as unyielding as a mountain and as compassionate as a parent's embrace. He saw the scales of justice, their balance maintained by a force that knew every secret, every choice, every consequence. And then, mercy flowed. It poured from the throne like a river of gold, illuminating the heavens and touching even the furthest reaches of creation. It was not a soft or fragile thing but a force as powerful as the judgments themselves. Enoch realized that justice and mercy were not opposites but two aspects of the same truth, bound together by a wisdom far beyond human understanding. The angel beside Enoch motioned upward, drawing his gaze to the pinnacle of the throne. He could not fully comprehend what he saw, but the impression it left was indelible. At the summit of the throne, surrounded by an intensity of light that even the angels did not approach, was the one who sat enthroned. Enoch's entire being quaked. This was the source, the origin of all things, the power that held the cosmos together. There were no words to describe the one on the throne, for words could only diminish what he beheld. The light emanating from this presence was life itself, a radiance that created, sustained, and redeemed. Enoch could not raise his head, but he did not need to. The presence of the one enveloped him, not as a blaze, but as a quiet certainty, a reminder that he was seen, known, and loved. Every question he had ever carried dissolved in that moment, replaced by a peace that surpassed all understanding. He saw more. Beings stood before the throne, their faces a blend of awe and sorrow. These were the Watchers, the rebellious ones, their splendor diminished but not extinguished. Their rebellion had marked them, their defiance written into their very forms, yet they stood in the presence of the throne, awaiting judgment. Enoch felt their anguish, the weight of their choices, and the longing for what they had lost. He saw their sentences pronounced, not with cruelty but with the same balance of justice and mercy that had governed all he had witnessed. Even in their fall, there was no abandonment, no absence of the Creator's presence. As the scene unfolded, Enoch's eyes were drawn to the earth below. He saw humanity, fragile and beautiful, struggling under the weight of sin yet still bearing the image of the Creator. He saw the divine light reaching down, not as a flood but as 1,000 streams, touching lives and offering hope. The connection between the throne and the earth was unbreakable. Every act of love, every choice of kindness, every moment of repentance echoed in the heavens, resonating with the same song that surrounded the throne. Enoch's heart swelled as he understood the depth of this connection, the care with which every life was held. The throne spoke once more, its voice both thunderous and tender, and Enoch felt himself filled with a purpose that burned like fire. He was to carry this vision, not as a burden but as a gift, a testament to the glory he had witnessed. The light from the throne touched him, leaving a mark not visible but indelible, a sign that he had stood in the presence of the Almighty. As the light around him began to shift, Enoch realized that he was being drawn away. The celestial court faded into the distance, but its essence remained, a part of him now. The throne, the beings, the rivers of light, they were not gone, for they had imprinted themselves on his soul. He returned to the world below, but the memory of the throne burned within him. It was a fire that could not be extinguished, a truth that would guide his every step. And though the earth surrounded him once more, Enoch carried the heavens within him. The air was heavy, thicker than Enoch had ever felt before. It was not the weight of the earth, but something deeper, a burden carried by the cries of the unseen. He stood at the edge of an abyss, his heart tightening as he looked into the darkness below. The angel at his side motioned for him to gaze further, and though every instinct told him to look away, he obeyed. What he saw made his soul shudder. Beneath him, figures moved in restless agony, their forms once radiant but now dimmed by a shadow that seemed to cling to their very essence. These were not ordinary prisoners, these were the Watchers, the rebellious angels who had turned their backs on the Creator. Their faces bore no chains, yet they were bound, their suffering etched into their every movement. Their voices rose from the depths, a chorus of lamentation that echoed through the abyss. It was a sound unlike any Enoch had ever heard, filled with sorrow so profound it felt as if the very heavens might weep. Their cries were not the wails of defiance, but of regret, of longing for what had been lost. They called out not to each other, but to the throne they had forsaken, their pleas rising like a storm against the silence of eternity. One voice stood out among the others, its tone both commanding and broken. Enoch recognized it as the leader of the Watchers, the one who had first whispered rebellion into their hearts. The words were fragmented, a plea for understanding, a cry for forgiveness. "Have mercy," the voice said, cracking under the weight of its own guilt. "We did not know, we did not understand, let us return to the light." The angel beside Enoch spoke softly, its tone free of judgment. "They seek what they cannot undo. Their choices have bound them here, and their cries now reach the heavens." Enoch's heart ached as he watched. Though they had fallen, though their actions had wrought untold harm, he could not help but see their torment. He felt the depth of their sorrow, the crushing weight of their realization that they had severed themselves from the Creator's harmony. Then, to his astonishment, the angel turned to him. "You are to stand between them and the throne. You are to carry their words to the one who judges all." Enoch froze. The enormity of the task swept over him, and he felt the ground beneath him tremble. How could he, a mortal man, bear the pleas of these fallen ones? How could he approach the throne with their cries? Yet, the angel's gaze was steady. "You have been chosen," it said, as though the words alone carried the strength he needed. Enoch nodded, though his hands trembled. He knelt at the edge of the abyss, listening more closely to the voices below. The Watchers did not see him, but he heard their every word, their confessions, their promises, their desperate hope that somehow, the Creator would hear them. As he rose, Enoch felt the weight of their cries settle upon him. It was not a physical burden, but one that pressed against his soul, a sorrow he could not ignore. He turned toward the light, his steps hesitant at first, but growing steadier with each step. The ascent to the heavenly court felt different this time. The light was no less brilliant, the music no less profound, but Enoch carried with him a heaviness that seemed to change the very air around him. The angels he passed looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and understanding, their radiant forms silent as he moved among them. When he reached the throne, he fell to his knees, unable to stand in its presence. The light surrounded him, not as an embrace, but as a force that laid bare every part of him. Enoch could feel the weight of the watchers' voices, their pleas rising from his heart to the throne. He spoke, though his voice trembled. They ask for mercy, he said, the words simple yet heavy with meaning. They have repented of their rebellion, and they long to return to your presence. The light from the throne pulsed, a rhythm that filled the heavens with its resonance. Enoch felt its response not as words, but as a truth that settled over him like a mantle. He could feel the balance of justice and mercy, the weight of the watchers' deeds against the sincerity of their pleas. The silence that followed was not empty, it was alive with meaning. Enoch felt the judgment being made, its finality unshakable yet tempered by a mercy that stretched beyond his understanding. The voice of the throne, a sound both gentle and overwhelming, filled the space around him. They are heard, the voice said, each word carrying the force of 1,000 suns. But their actions cannot be undone. Their place remains, yet their cries are not forgotten. Enoch felt tears on his face, though he did not know if they were his own or the echo of the watcher's sorrow. He understood the message, though its weight pressed heavily upon him. The watchers would not be restored, but neither would they be abandoned. Their cries would linger in the eternal balance, a testament to the Creator's justice and mercy intertwined. When Enoch descended once more, the abyss below him seemed quieter, the cries less frantic. He stood at its edge, his heart heavy but resolute. Though he could not change their fate, he had carried their voices to the throne, and he felt a strange peace in knowing they had been heard. The angel beside him spoke once more, its voice like a song carried on the wind. You have done as you were called to do. The heavens bear witness to your faithfulness. Enoch nodded, though his heart still ached for the watchers. As he turned away from the abyss, he felt the light of the heavens upon him, a reminder that even in the depths of sorrow, there was a thread of hope that could never be extinguished. The visions came swiftly, like a torrent of water breaking through a dam, overwhelming and relentless. Enoch stood still, though his heart raced, his eyes wide as scenes of unimaginable chaos unfolded before him. The world he had known, with its beauty and harmony, seemed distant, replaced by something that seared his soul with sorrow. Cities, once vibrant, were now drowned in blood. The Nephilim, towering and monstrous, roamed the land with unchecked fury. Their strength, a gift corrupted, had become a tool of domination. Enoch saw them tearing through villages, their enormous hands gripping men, women, and children as if they were mere playthings. Their laughter was a chilling sound, devoid of joy but filled with cruelty. The sky itself seemed to mourn, its once brilliant hues now tinged with ash and shadow. Fires burned across the horizon, consuming fields, homes, and forests. The cries of the innocent echoed in Enoch's ears, their desperation reaching out to him as if seeking salvation from a force far beyond his mortal abilities. He felt their fear, their hopelessness, as the ground beneath them trembled under the weight of unholy violence. Amidst the chaos, Enoch's eyes were drawn to the watchers, their radiant forms dulled and twisted. They walked among humanity, their presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Each step they took seemed to taint the earth, leaving it darker and colder. Their gifts, knowledge of the heavens, of metal, of the mysteries of creation, had been turned into tools of destruction. He saw blacksmiths forging weapons of unnatural sharpness, their hands guided by the forbidden wisdom given to them. Blades glinted with an otherworldly light, their edges honed to cut through flesh and bone effortlessly. He saw potions brewed from secrets never meant to be known, poisons that seeped into rivers and wells, spreading death silently but surely. Women adorned themselves with powders and paints made from the earth, their faces masked with beauty that felt unnatural, almost haunting. What should have been a celebration of creation had become a mockery, a facade hiding the corruption beneath. Enoch could see it clearly, the way these gifts, meant for goodness, had been twisted into chains of vanity and deceit. And yet, It was the Nephilim who were the embodiment of this decay. Their size was not merely physical, their presence loomed over the world like a storm cloud that refused to pass. Wherever they went, death followed. They crushed those who resisted, enslaved those who obeyed, and left ruin in their wake. Their appetites were insatiable, not just for food but for power, for destruction, for the total submission of all living things. Enoch's heart broke as he watched their deeds. They devoured the land, stripping it of its life and leaving it barren. Rivers ran red, not with water but with the blood of those who dared to stand against them. Crops withered under the weight of their trampling feet, and even the animals fled, their instincts warning them of the evil that had taken hold of the earth. Then came the visions of the heavens. Enoch felt himself lifted above the carnage, his view expanding to encompass the entire world. What he saw brought tears to his eyes. The corruption was not contained to one place, it had spread like a plague, infecting every corner of the earth. Men turned on one another with weapons forged from forbidden knowledge. Women wept over children who would never know peace. The cries of the innocent rose like smoke, reaching up to the heavens. The angels standing beside Enoch were silent, their faces unreadable. But their stillness spoke volumes. It was not indifference but grief, a mourning for a world that had strayed so far from the light. Their sorrow mirrored Enoch's own, a shared pain that transcended the boundaries of mortal and celestial. And then the voice came. It was not loud, but it resonated with power, a sound that seemed to come from the very fabric of existence. It spoke not in words, but in truths, each one sinking into Enoch's heart like a stone dropped into water. The earth has cried out, the voice said. Its blood has reached the heavens. Its corruption cannot stand. Enoch understood. What he saw next was not vengeance, but justice, a rebalancing of the scales that had been tipped so drastically. He saw the waters rising, not as a gentle rain but as a deluge, a force that would cleanse the earth of its impurity. He saw fire falling from the sky, consuming the altars of sin and scattering the works of the watchers into ash. He saw the Nephilim fall, their massive forms swallowed by the waters, their cries of defiance silenced by the force of divine judgment. The watchers, too, faced the weight of their actions. Their brilliance, already dimmed, was extinguished entirely as they were cast into the depths of their prison. Their cries echoed in the void, not in rebellion but in recognition of the justice they could no longer escape. Enoch's eyes filled with tears. The visions did not give him satisfaction or relief. They gave him sorrow, a sorrow so deep it felt as if his heart might break under its weight. He turned to the angel, his voice trembling. Is there no hope? Is there no way to save them? The angel's gaze was steady, its expression one of profound understanding. Hope remains, it said, but not for all. The Creator's mercy is great, but so too is the weight of corruption. Justice must come, for without it, the earth would perish entirely. Enoch nodded, though the weight of the visions pressed heavily upon him. He felt the sorrow of the Creator, a mourning for a creation that had turned against itself. He felt the love that still reached out, even in the midst of judgment, offering redemption to those who would seek it. The scenes began to fade, the images of chaos and destruction replaced by the quiet of the heavens. But the weight of what he had seen remained with Enoch. His heart ached for humanity, for the beauty that had been lost, for the innocence that had been consumed by the fires of corruption. As the light of the visions dimmed, Enoch stood in silence, his spirit heavy with the burden of knowledge. Yet within that weight was a glimmer of something more, something not yet fully realized, but undeniably present. The sky had darkened, not with clouds, but with a weight that could be felt deep in the bones. Enoch stood alone, his breath shallow as the voice of the Almighty wrapped around him like the wind, both gentle and unyielding. It carried a gravity that left no room for doubt, a solemn truth that pierced his heart with equal parts reverence and sorrow. A vision opened before him, vivid and unrelenting. He saw the earth as it was, teetering on the edge of collapse, corrupted by the sins of the watchers and the havoc of the Nephilim. Blood stained the soil, the cries of the oppressed rose like a dirge, and the air was heavy with despair. Yet, even amidst this chaos, Enoch felt the pulse of something far greater, a force moving with purpose, preparing to restore what had been broken. The voice returned, its power resonating in every fiber of his being. The time of reckoning approaches, it said. The earth groans beneath the weight of its iniquity, and the waters will rise to cleanse it. Enoch's knees buckled under the weight of these words. The flood. He saw it now in the vision, a wall of water stretching beyond the horizon, its roar drowning out all else. It was not vengeful but purposeful, a sweeping tide sent to wash away the corruption that had taken root. Mountains were consumed, cities were submerged, and the Nephilim, those mighty beings who had once dominated the land, were brought low, their voices silenced forever beneath the depths. Yet the vision did not end with destruction. Amidst the waters, Enoch saw something else, something that stirred a flicker of hope within him. A single family, sheltered and chosen, carried forward in an ark of wood and faith. Through them, life would begin anew, untainted and preserved. The voice spoke again, its tone both commanding and tender. Through the righteous, I will rebuild. Through them, my covenant will endure. The flood was both judgment and mercy, a paradox Enoch could scarcely comprehend. He saw the grief in it, the love intertwined with justice. This was not a creator delighting in destruction, but one who mourned what had become necessary. Enoch felt this grief as his own, and it weighed upon him like a physical burden. He bowed his head, his hands trembling. Why me, Lord? Why am I shown these things? The answer came not in words, but in understanding. Enoch had been chosen not because of his strength, but because of his heart, his willingness to listen and obey. He was to be a vessel, a bridge between the divine and the earthly. And now, he bore a duty that transcended his own life, a responsibility to ensure that righteousness would not perish, even as the waters consumed the earth. The vision shifted again, pulling Enoch deeper into the mysteries of the Creator's plan. He saw his descendants, their faces flickering like flames in a darkened room. Among them, there were those who walked in light, carrying the spark of righteousness that Enoch himself had nurtured. And through these faces, he saw the outlines of a promise, a covenant written not in ink, but in the unyielding truth of divine will. The voice spoke once more, and its words etched themselves into Enoch's soul. I will preserve the righteous. Though the waters rise and the earth trembles, my covenant will endure. Through you, my purpose will stand. Enoch lifted his eyes to the heavens, where the stars shimmered faintly through the veil of impending judgment. He felt the enormity of what was to come, but he also felt the unshakable presence of the Almighty, a reassurance that even in the flood, there was a plan far greater than he could fathom. The vision shifted again, and Enoch saw himself, standing on a high mountain. Before him was a scroll, its surface glowing with an otherworldly light. Words appeared upon it, not written by human hands, but by the will of the Creator. It was a covenant, a binding promise that would withstand the tides of time. And Enoch understood his role, not merely to witness, but to carry this covenant, to safeguard the truth for those who would come after him. The scroll unrolled further, revealing prophecies that stretched beyond Enoch's comprehension. He saw the floodwaters recede, the earth reborn in a purity it had not known since the days of its creation. He saw the line of his descendants grow, spreading across the land like seeds in fertile soil. And he saw, far in the future, a figure of unmatched grace and power, one who would fulfill the covenant in ways that even Enoch could not yet grasp. Tears streamed down Enoch's face as the vision began to fade, leaving him once more in the quiet of the present. The weight of what he had seen pressed upon him, but so too did the strength of the Creator's promise. He was not alone in this. The Almighty had chosen him, not for his own sake, but for the sake of all who would follow. Enoch stood, his legs steady now, his heart burning with a fire that could not be extinguished. He gazed at the earth below, at the people who moved about their lives unaware of the tide that was soon to come. His task was clear, to walk in righteousness, to speak the truth, and to preserve the light even as the darkness threatened to consume it. The heavens were silent now, but the voice remained within him, a steady rhythm that guided his every step. Enoch knew the flood was inevitable, but he also knew that it was not the end. It was the beginning of something far greater, a purification that would pave the way for the fulfillment of a promise that could not be broken. And so, with the weight of the covenant upon him and the vision still fresh in his mind, Enoch descended the mountain, his heart heavy yet filled with purpose. The world would not understand what was coming. But Enoch did. And he would carry the burden of that knowledge, no matter the cost. The heavens trembled with a sound that seemed to split existence itself, a clash so profound that it reached the earth below. Enoch, gazing upward, felt the reverberations in his soul, a battle not of men, but of powers that transcended comprehension. The air was thick with an energy that crackled and burned, as if creation itself braced for what was unfolding above. The loyal angels, their forms radiant and majestic, stood as one. Their wings shimmered like molten gold, and their eyes burned with a righteous fury that no darkness could extinguish. At their head was Michael, the archangel, his countenance fierce yet noble, bearing the authority of the Almighty. His sword, forged of celestial light, glowed with a brilliance that seemed to illuminate every corner of existence. He raised it high, and the heavens echoed with the sound of his voice, a rallying cry that stirred courage in the hearts of all who stood with him. On the other side, the fallen watchers loomed, their once glorious forms now twisted and darkened by their rebellion. Their leader, Azazel, stood at the forefront, his eyes filled with defiance and a terrible sorrow that only added to his wrath. The watchers had once walked in the presence of the Almighty, their voices part of the eternal chorus. But now, they were an army of ruin, their pride leading them to stand against the very order they had been created to uphold. The two forces met in a fury that words could scarcely contain. Blades of light clashed against weapons wrought from forbidden knowledge, each strike sending shockwaves that rippled across the fabric of the heavens. Stars flickered and dimmed as the battle raged, their light overwhelmed by the brilliance and shadow of the combatants. The loyal angels fought with a unity that reflected their purpose, their movements flowing like a symphony, each one a part of a greater whole. But the watchers were formidable. They fought with the ferocity of beings who knew they had already lost everything, their despair fueling their defiance. They called upon powers they were never meant to wield, unleashing torrents of flame and darkness that threatened to consume all in their path. Their cries were not just of anger, but of something deeper, regret twisted into hatred, longing turned into destruction. Enoch, though distant from the battle, felt every moment of it as though it were etched into his very being. He saw flashes of the conflict in his mind's eye, Michael, his sword cleaving through the darkness, his voice commanding the heavens to stand firm. Gabriel, his trumpet blaring a sound so pure and piercing that it scattered the shadows like a storm wind. Raphael, his movements precise and unyielding, striking down the fallen with a grace that seemed almost mournful. Amidst the chaos, the watchers began to falter. Their rebellion, though fierce, was no match for the righteous order of the heavenly host. One by one, they were overpowered, their cries echoing into the abyss. Azazel, defiant to the end, faced Michael in a confrontation that seemed to shake the very foundations of existence. Their battle was a clash of wills as much as it was of strength, each strike carrying the weight of their respective causes. Michael's voice thundered, filled with the authority of the Almighty. You were given glory, Azazel, yet you chose ruin. Now face the judgment of the one you have defied. With a final, resounding blow, Michael's sword struck true. Azazel fell, his form shrouded in a darkness that seemed to devour itself. The remaining watchers, seeing their leader's defeat, were overcome, their resistance crumbling under the relentless might of the loyal angels. The heavens quieted, the battle's fury giving way to a profound stillness. The loyal angels, though victorious, did not celebrate. Their faces bore the weight of what had been done, a sorrow for their fallen brothers who had chosen rebellion over grace. Michael stood among them, his sword lowered, his expression one of solemn resolve. Bind them, he commanded, his voice steady. They will face their judgment. Chains, forged from the essence of divine justice, appeared in the hands of the loyal angels. These were no ordinary bonds, they carried the authority of the Creator, unbreakable and unyielding. One by one, the fallen watchers were bound, their once proud forms reduced to shadows of their former selves. Their cries filled the heavens, a mixture of anger, regret, and despair, as they were led to the abyss, a chasm so vast and dark that it seemed to swallow light itself. The abyss was a place of unimaginable desolation, its depths stretching beyond sight. It was here that the watchers would remain, chained until the appointed time of final judgment. As they were cast into the void, their voices faded, leaving behind only the memory of what they had once been and the ruin they had brought upon themselves. Enoch, standing below, felt the weight of the moment like a stone upon his chest. He did not rejoice in the watchers' defeat, for he saw in their fall a tragic reminder of the cost of pride and rebellion. Yet he also felt the unshakable justice of the Almighty, a righteousness that upheld the balance of creation even in the face of such sorrow. The heavens began to mend, their light returning as the battle's echoes faded into silence. The loyal angels, their task complete, ascended once more to the higher realms, their forms gleaming with a renewed purpose. Michael, the sword of the Almighty, cast a final glance toward the earth, his gaze filled with a quiet resolve. Then he turned, his wings unfurling, and vanished into the celestial heights. The sky above Enoch was clear now, the stars shining with a brilliance that seemed almost new. But the memory of what had transpired lingered, a testament to the war that had shaken the heavens and the victory that had preserved their order. Enoch bowed his head, his heart heavy yet filled with awe, knowing he had witnessed a moment that would echo through eternity. The air shimmered with a quiet intensity as Enoch stood in the presence of an angel whose radiance seemed woven from the very fabric of light. The angel's eyes were deep, holding an eternal wisdom that saw not only the present moment but every thread of existence stretching back and forward in time. The stillness around them was profound, broken only by the faint hum of something vast and eternal, the heartbeat of the cosmos itself. Enoch, the angel, spoke, his voice resonant yet gentle, like the distant roll of thunder softened by the wind. You have been chosen not just to witness, but to carry forward the will of the Almighty. Through you, the divine will preserve its truth, so that humanity, in its frailty, may not be lost. The words washed over Enoch, both a comfort and a weight. He had often felt the gaze of the heavens upon him, a silent urging toward a purpose he could not yet fully grasp. But now, standing in this radiant presence, the enormity of what lay before him became clear. His heart swelled with both awe and trepidation, knowing that the path ahead was not his alone to walk, yet the burden would be his to bear. The angel extended a hand, and before Enoch, a vision unfurled like a scroll written in light. He saw himself surrounded by his descendants, teaching them words not his own but given to him by the Creator. His voice, steady and filled with conviction, echoed through generations, carrying a message of hope, of warning, of righteousness. He saw hands reaching for him, some eager to receive the wisdom he carried, others trembling in fear of truths they could not bear to face. And amidst it all, he felt the quiet assurance of a presence greater than himself, guiding and sustaining him. Your name, the angel continued, will endure, not as one who sought power or glory, but as one who obeyed. Through you, the knowledge of the heavens will be preserved, written so that the righteous may endure even in the shadow of chaos. A scroll appeared in Enoch's hands, its surface gleaming with letters not of ink but of light, symbols that pulsed with a life of their own. As he looked upon it, understanding flooded his mind, not in words but in truths so profound they seemed to shape the very air around him. He knew that what he held was not merely knowledge but a gift, a connection between the Creator and creation, meant to guide and protect a world teetering on the brink of despair. But with the scroll came a realization of the challenge ahead. The truths he would write, the warnings he would share, would not always be welcomed. He saw shadows rising, figures who scoffed at his words, who sought to twist them or silence them. He saw moments of isolation, where even those closest to him questioned his purpose. And yet, amidst the doubts and the trials, there was always a light, a promise that his obedience would not be in vain. Your writings will endure, the angel said, as if sensing Enoch's thoughts. They will be a beacon for those who seek the path of righteousness, a lifeline for those who are lost. Even when the earth is swept by judgment, your words will remain, carried forward by the faithful. Enoch's breath caught as the vision shifted. He saw not only his own people but distant lands, unfamiliar faces, speaking languages he did not know. And yet, they held his words, their eyes filled with the same wonder and reverence he now felt. His legacy would stretch beyond his own understanding, a thread woven into the vast tapestry of time. The angel stepped closer, his light dimming slightly, as if to draw Enoch into an even deeper understanding. You will be shown things that no man has seen, mysteries that are not for this age, but for ages yet to come. Write them faithfully, as they are given to you, for the day will come when they are needed. Enoch's hands trembled as he clutched the scroll. He felt the enormity of the trust placed in him, the divine confidence that he, a mere man, could carry out such a task. But more than that, he felt the strength of the one who had called him, a strength that seemed to fill him even as his own faltered. Then the angel touched his shoulder, and a warmth spread through him, steadying his spirit. You are not alone, the angel said softly. The Almighty walks with you, his hand guiding yours. What you write will not be yours alone, but his words through you. Trust in him, and the work will be fulfilled. Enoch nodded, his heart swelling with both fear and courage. He understood now that his life was not his own, but a vessel for something far greater. The weight of the task before him did not lessen, but he felt an assurance that he could bear it, not through his own strength, but through the one who had chosen him. As the vision faded, the scroll remained in Enoch's hands, its light now faint but still pulsing with life. He held it close, feeling its warmth, as if it were a part of him. He knew that it was more than a message, it was a covenant, a sacred bond between him and the Creator, a charge to preserve not just knowledge but the very essence of hope and righteousness. The angel stepped back, his form beginning to blend with the light of the heavens. Go now, he said, his voice carrying both command and blessing. Your path will not be easy, but it will be guided. Write, teach, and trust, for the Almighty's plan is perfect, and his purposes will prevail. Enoch stood for a moment, the weight of the moment sinking into his soul. He looked down at the scroll, then up at the heavens, his heart filled with a mixture of awe and resolve. He knew that his life would never be the same, but he also knew that it was no longer his alone. It belonged to something greater, something eternal. The sky above seemed to brighten, the stars shining with a clarity that mirrored the newfound clarity in Enoch's heart. As he began his descent back to the earth, the scroll still in his hands, he felt the presence of the Almighty surrounding him, a quiet assurance that, whatever lay ahead, he would not walk alone. Enoch stood in a vast expanse where the heavens stretched endlessly, shimmering with a light that seemed to pulse with life itself. The stars glimmered not as distant specks, but as luminous beings, each holding a unique presence, singing in harmony with the cosmos. The air vibrated with a symphony of sound, as if the universe itself were breathing, resonating with the rhythm of something eternal. For a moment, Enoch felt weightless, as if he were suspended in a sacred dance, carried by the currents of divine energy. Beside him, an angel appeared, radiating a calm authority. His robes flowed like liquid silver, and his voice was a gentle melody that resonated in Enoch's very soul. You have been brought here to see and to know, the angel said, gesturing toward the boundless expanse above and around them. This is the order of the heavens, the foundation upon which creation rests. To understand it is to glimpse the mind of the Creator. Enoch's gaze was drawn upward as the heavens opened before him. He saw the stars, their paths intricately woven like the threads of a masterful tapestry. Each star moved with purpose, its journey neither aimless nor bound by chance. He realized they were not merely points of light, but servants of a higher design, their movement a reflection of divine will. As he watched, patterns emerged, their precision defying comprehension. It was as though he could feel the weight of every decision, every moment, accounted for in the Creator's plan. The angel raised his hand, and the stars seemed to shift, their light gathering to form a vision. Enoch saw the sun and moon, their cycles perfectly balanced, their orbits ordained to sustain life on earth. These, the angel explained, are not merely celestial bodies, but keepers of time, markers of seasons, and reminders of the Creator's steadfastness. Their paths are written, yet their light is freely given. Their purpose is service, yet they shine with freedom. Enoch marveled at the harmony before him, but felt a stirring within, a question he could not suppress. If all is so perfectly ordered, he asked, his voice trembling, then why does chaos exist? Why is the earth plagued by rebellion and suffering? The angel turned, his gaze piercing yet kind. Because the Creator, in his wisdom, has gifted his children with free will. The heavens follow their paths because they were designed to do so, but humanity was given the choice to walk its own. Love that is forced is no love at all. Obedience without freedom is hollow. The balance between divine order and free will is the mystery you must carry. Enoch's heart ached with the weight of this truth. He understood now that the stars, and their unwavering obedience, were not burdened by the choices that plagued humanity. Yet, in their freedom, humans carried the potential for both the highest good and the deepest evil. It was a paradox, a tension that could not be resolved but only accepted. The vision shifted again, and Enoch saw the earth below, cradled in the vast expanse of the heavens. He saw the rivers flowing with a grace that mirrored the stars above, the mountains standing as silent witnesses to the ages. Yet amidst the beauty, he saw shadows creeping, figures driven by greed, by violence, by a willful ignorance of the harmony surrounding them. He saw the influence of the Watchers, the corruption they had sown, and the scars left on creation. Tears welled in Enoch's eyes as he turned to the angel. "Is there hope?" he asked, his voice breaking. "If humanity has chosen chaos, can it ever be brought back to the light?" The angel's expression softened, and he placed a hand on Enoch's shoulder. Hope is the heart of the Creator's plan. Even amidst chaos, the divine order is not broken but waits, patiently, for hearts to return. Humanity was given the stars as a guide, the laws of the heavens as a mirror of what is true. But more than that, they were given the capacity to love, to choose, to seek the light even in darkness. That is their greatest gift, and their greatest burden. The stars above seemed to glow brighter as the angel spoke, their light filling Enoch with a quiet strength. He saw their unwavering paths not as rigid constraints but as reminders of a promise, a covenant that the Creator's design, though unseen, remained intact. The heavens, in their majesty, called out to humanity, inviting them to look up and remember that they were not alone. Enoch's vision expanded, and he saw the laws of the Creator etched into the very fabric of existence. These laws were not merely rules, but the essence of life itself, woven into the breath of the wind, the flow of water, the heartbeat of every living thing. They were the silent rhythm that sustained creation, inviting humanity to align with them, to find peace in their harmony. The angel spoke again, his voice filled with solemnity. "You are to write these truths, Enoch. Not all will understand, and some will reject what you reveal. But there will be those who listen, who see the light reflected in your words. For them, your writings will be a lifeline, a reminder that the Creator's order is unbroken, even when the world seems lost." Enoch nodded, his resolve firm. He felt the weight of his task, but also the assurance of its purpose. He understood that his role was not to force understanding but to offer it, to plant seeds that would one day bear fruit in hearts ready to receive them. The angel gestured once more, and the vision began to fade, the stars returning to their infinite dance. Enoch felt himself grounded again, standing on the earth but forever changed by what he had seen. He carried within him a new awareness, a sense of the delicate balance between freedom and order, chaos and harmony. The heavens had whispered their truths to him, and he was entrusted to pass them on, a bridge between the divine and the mortal. As the angel's light dimmed, Enoch looked up at the stars, their brilliance undiminished. He knew that their light would continue to shine, constant and true, long after his own had faded. And in that light, he found hope, a quiet but unshakable promise that the Creator's plan, vast and incomprehensible, would endure. The room was silent, suffocatingly still, as Enoch stepped into the vast chamber. It felt as if time itself had come to a halt. Before him lay an immense, ancient book, its pages stretching beyond sight, filled with glowing letters that pulsed with an eerie light. The words were not just ink on paper, but living, breathing records of the lives that had come before. He could feel the weight of countless souls, their stories bound within these pages. The air seemed to hum with their echoes, whispers of joy, sorrow, hope, and despair. Every decision, every action, every heartbeat was written here. The angel beside him, ever silent but unwavering in his presence, nodded slowly toward the book. "This is the book of judgment," he said, his voice barely a whisper, as though speaking too loudly might shatter the delicate balance of the room. Here's where every deed of every soul is recorded. Each life, each moment, is accounted for. No action, no thought, is forgotten. Enoch's heart thudded painfully in his chest. His eyes roamed over the pages, flickering with scenes of human lives, people laughing, crying, praying, sinning, loving. It was all there, laid bare, every choice, every consequence. He saw children playing, men and women working, families coming together and falling apart. And, intertwined with these innocent moments, he saw the darkness, the cruelty, the betrayal, the violence. Each evil act was etched in the pages with a stark, almost suffocating clarity. His breath caught in his throat as he saw his own name flicker on the glowing pages, his own life chronicled in the book before him. It was not just a record of deeds, but of who one truly was, laid bare for all eternity. He saw the pain of his own choices, the moments where he had fallen short, where his actions had not lived up to his intentions. He felt exposed, as if nothing in him could remain hidden from the eye of the Creator. These are the deeds of humanity, the angel continued, gesturing toward the vast, endless pages. This book does not judge, it merely records. It is the record of choices made, the path taken, and the weight carried. But there is more. The end of this book holds the prophecy of all things, the final judgment, and the restoration of all that was lost. Enoch's gaze shifted, drawn by the words near the end of the book. As he focused, the letters began to shimmer with greater intensity, each word revealing itself like a secret whispered across the ages. What he saw was beyond anything he had ever imagined. The final judgment was not the end of existence, but the cleansing of it. The Creator would, in His boundless mercy, sift through the ashes of the world. There would be no place for those who had deliberately sown chaos and destruction, but there would be redemption, an opportunity for those who had turned their hearts, even in the final moments, back to light. The world would be reborn, restored to the beauty it was meant to have. Peace would reign once more. But first, the earth would endure a great trial, a fire that would burn away all that was corrupt, all that was unjust. It would be a purification. Enoch could feel the weight of it, the immense burden of what was to come. His chest tightened as the prophecy unfolded before him, the devastation and the hope intertwined. He saw the faces of countless souls, the innocent, the guilty, the righteous, the wicked, all waiting for their turn to stand before the Creator's judgment. Some would be redeemed, and some would be lost forever in the endless depths of regret. But even as the great destruction loomed, there was hope. The book did not speak only of doom. It also spoke of the possibility of renewal, of a new beginning. The earth, though broken and scarred, would be healed. What had been lost would be restored in a way that would far exceed anything humanity could imagine. The darkness would not have the final say. The Creator's plan was vast, and even in the midst of chaos, there was beauty in His design. How can this be? Enoch whispered, his voice shaking. How can the world be restored when it seems so lost? How can there be hope when the corruption has run so deep? The angel's expression softened, and for the first time, Enoch saw a flicker of sorrow in his eyes. It is not for you to understand fully, but it is the will of the Creator. The Book of Judgment is not just a ledger of past deeds, it is a promise. A promise that every tear will be wiped away, every wrong made right, every heart healed. The world will be purged of its evil, not for punishment, but for restoration. It is the ultimate act of mercy. Enoch's eyes filled with tears as he gazed at the book. He had seen so much suffering, so much chaos. It seemed impossible that anything could survive the judgment, let alone be restored. Yet, as he stood there, feeling the presence of the Creator in the air around him, a deep peace began to settle in his heart. The promise of restoration was not just a hope, it was a truth that would one day come to pass. The Creator had not abandoned the world, even in its darkest hour. The angel looked at him with quiet understanding. You, Enoch, are called to witness this truth. You are chosen to be a messenger of what is to come. Your task is to share what you have seen, to remind humanity that judgment is not an end, but a new beginning. That even in the face of darkness, there is light. That even in the deepest night, the dawn will break. As the vision of the Book of Judgment began to fade, Enoch stood in stunned silence. He had seen the balance of the universe, how every soul's actions were recorded and how they would be judged in the end. He understood the Creator's plan, and though it was difficult, painful, and even heartbreaking, he knew it was the only way to bring about true peace. This was not a world of endless punishment, but one of redemption, where even the darkest moments could give birth to light. In the stillness, Enoch felt a deep weight on his soul, a weight of responsibility, but also a weight of love. The Creator's mercy was immense, and it was this mercy that would restore the world. And it was this truth that Enoch would carry forward, the sacred knowledge that would guide humanity back to the light. The sky darkened, a heavy weight hanging over the earth. The air was thick with the scent of impending rain, the kind that could drown the world, leaving nothing untouched. In the distance, thunder rumbled, a sound that seemed to echo through the hearts of all who heard it. It was not just a storm, it was a reckoning. The flood was coming. The waters would rise, inch by inch, creeping up with terrifying certainty, until nothing remained of the world as it had been. The wickedness that had plagued the earth, the violence, the lies, the corruption, had reached its breaking point. The Creator had spoken, and the judgment was set in motion. Humanity, in its arrogance and cruelty, had sealed its fate. But even as the floodwaters swirled on the horizon, there was a thread of hope, fragile yet unyielding. Noah stood at the edge of the ark, his eyes cast to the dark, brooding sky. He had built this massive vessel, following the Creator's command, though the mocking voices of those who had scoffed at him still rang in his ears. "What are you doing, Noah? There is no flood." "You are a fool," they had said. But Noah knew. He had heard the voice of the Creator, and in that voice, there was no doubt, no fear. There was only certainty. Behind him, his family had gathered, silent, their faces etched with both fear and faith. They were the last, the only ones spared from the coming destruction. The ark was more than just wood and nails. It was a lifeline, a promise. A promise that they, and through them, humanity, would begin again. Their hearts beat as one in the quiet of the moment, each person feeling the weight of the world's sin, yet holding on to the hope that somehow, they would endure. As the first raindrops began to fall, they were gentle, almost soothing. But soon, the rain grew stronger, harder. The earth began to tremble as if the very bones of creation were shaking with grief. The ground softened, the rivers swelled, and the seas roared. It was as though the world itself had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment to arrive. The water didn't just rise from the earth, but from the heavens, pouring down in sheets, filling the sky with an impenetrable darkness. Noah could feel the weight of it on his shoulders. The world was drowning. He didn't know how long the storm would last, but he knew what it meant. This was not just a flood. This was the cleansing of the earth, the washing away of sin. It was an act of mercy, painful, brutal, necessary. As the water reached higher, Noah's family gathered in the center of the ark, clinging to one another for comfort, for strength. The storm outside was violent, the sound of the crashing waves deafening, but inside the ark, there was a strange stillness. The walls of the ark groaned and creaked under the pressure of the flood, but the family remained untouched. The Creator had promised them safety, and though the world outside was being swept away, they were safe in His care. Enoch's words echoed in Noah's mind. He had been told that the flood was not the end. It was a beginning. A new chapter for humanity, where the Creator would make a covenant with Noah, a promise that the earth would never again be destroyed by water. Noah didn't fully understand it, but he held on to the truth of it. He would not see the world end today. He would see it reborn. The days stretched into nights, the darkness endless. There was no way to measure time. The ark floated aimlessly, tossed by the waves, as if the earth itself had forgotten where it had once been. There was only the sound of rain, the thunder, and the silence inside. And then, after what seemed like eternity, the rain began to slow. The earth, once submerged, began to retreat, the waters pulling back, leaving behind only desolation. Noah peered out from the window of the ark, his heart heavy. He had seen the destruction. He had seen the death. He had witnessed the earth mourn. But as the floodwaters began to recede, he could also see the seeds of hope. The earth was barren, yes, but it was not destroyed. It was scarred, but it would heal. From the muddy waters, life would emerge again. Finally, the ark came to rest on a mountain. The waters were gone, the earth slowly coming back to life. Noah stepped out onto the land, the ground firm beneath his feet for the first time in so long. The air was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth, of new beginnings. He looked around, and for the first time in days, he could see beyond the fog of the storm. The sun, pale and weak at first, began to shine through the clouds, casting a soft glow over the barren landscape. It was as if the earth was taking a deep breath, ready to start anew. Noah fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the sight. The world had been cleansed. The wickedness had been washed away, and now it was up to him and his family to rebuild. The Creator's covenant with him was clear. He would be the father of a new humanity. The earth, though scarred, would be fertile again. The plants would grow, the animals would roam, and the people would rebuild. But this time, they would not repeat the mistakes of the past. They would remember the flood, the cleansing, the mercy, and the promise of the Creator. As Noah stood, the Creator's voice came to him, gentle but firm. "This is my covenant with you. Never again will I destroy the earth with water. I set my rainbow in the sky as a sign of this covenant, a promise between me and you, and every living creature. This earth is yours, and you shall be its stewards. But remember, life is fragile. Treat it with reverence, for it is a gift." Noah looked up, his heart swelling with both gratitude and responsibility. A rainbow appeared in the sky, its colors bright and vivid against the clearing storm clouds. It arched across the heavens like a bridge between the past and the future, a symbol of hope, of renewal, and of the Creator's enduring love for his creation. In the stillness of the moment, Noah understood. The flood had not just been a punishment, it had been a purification. The earth was no longer the same, and neither were they. Humanity had been given a second chance, and with that chance came the responsibility to live in harmony with the earth and with one another. The ark was no longer a symbol of survival, but of rebirth. The floodwaters had receded, but the world had not been left the same. It was a world of promise now. A world where the past had been washed away, and the future was yet to be written. And as Noah looked to the sky, he knew that the Creator would walk with them every step of the way. Long after the floodwaters had receded, and the earth had begun to heal, the memories of what had been left behind still lingered like a shadow. It was as if the sins of the past were not so easily washed away, for though the land was now cleansed, the hearts of men carried with them the echoes of the watchers. The angels who had once descended to earth, bringing forbidden knowledge, had left an imprint that no flood could erase. In the quiet of the early mornings, when the mist still clung to the earth and the sun had yet to rise, the world felt heavy. The whispers of the old times, the times when giants walked the earth and sorcery flickered in the night like dangerous embers, were never truly gone. Stories, half remembered and twisted by time, lived in the hearts of the people. They were legends now, tales passed down from one generation to the next, always with a shiver of fear that accompanied them, as though to speak the name of the Watchers was to invoke their curse. The Watchers had promised knowledge, but it was a knowledge that had come at a price that was never truly paid, for the consequences were passed down like a dark inheritance. Their teachings had reached beyond the borders of the earth, seeping into the hearts of men. And though the flood had wiped the slate clean in one sense, the seeds of corruption they had sown still grew in secret places. The myths of the old days were no longer stories told by the fire to frighten children. They were real in the hearts of those who remembered, those who knew that the ancient gods, the ones the Watchers had taught about, were not just fiction. The giants, the Nephilim, these beings, part angel, part human, were not gone. Their influence lived on, stirring the hearts of the proud and the powerful, who sought out the old knowledge for their own gain. The stories spoke of great cities, long lost to time, where men had built towers to touch the heavens, where sorcery was practiced in secret, and the power of the Watchers was felt in every shadow. These cities, though buried now beneath the earth, had not been forgotten. In the caves and forgotten temples, strange symbols could still be found, etched into the walls, remnants of an age that had been swallowed by the flood. The New World, despite its fresh start, was still haunted by the whispers of the past. And it wasn't just in the ruins where the Watchers had left their mark. It was in the hearts of the men and women who yearned for more than what their simple lives offered. They searched for answers in the stars, in the movements of the planets, and in the forgotten books of knowledge, hoping to catch a glimpse of the power the Watchers had once bestowed. The influence of the Watchers was like a shadow that could not be cast off. It hung over every culture that had risen in the wake of the flood. The Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, each one had their own version of the story. The gods they worshipped, the legends they told, were shaped by the teachings of the Watchers. Even as the flood had washed the earth clean, it seemed that the flood of knowledge, once unleashed, could never be stopped. The ancient ones had introduced metalworking, the forging of weapons, the art of writing. All these things had seemed like gifts to the early humans, blessings to lift them out of their ignorance. But as the generations passed, they became more like curses. The first men and women who wielded these tools could not resist the temptation to use them for destruction. The earth was scarred by wars, and the heavens were defiled by the arrogance of humanity. And though the flood had come to stop this madness, the seeds had already been planted. The Watchers, imprisoned now and bound in the abyss, had once believed they were offering humanity a path to greatness. They had shared their forbidden knowledge in the hopes of elevating mankind. But in the end, they had only brought ruin. The knowledge they had passed on was powerful, but it was not pure. It was too dangerous, too easily twisted to suit the will of the corrupt. And still, the legacy of the Watchers persisted, haunting the hearts of those who would seek power at any cost. Men, driven by greed and ambition, would look to the stars and the secrets hidden in the heavens, seeking out the same forbidden wisdom that had caused the downfall of the giants. They would take that knowledge, believing it could grant them dominion over all, and in their hunger, they would always fail to see the truth. The ancient stories, the old myths, were not just tales. They were warnings. And in the days after the flood, the people could feel it. The temptation to reach for that knowledge, to wield that power, was always there, just beyond the veil of the present. The Watchers may have been gone, but the echoes of their existence lived on in the hearts of men who could never forget the gifts they had brought. It was said that those who sought to understand the stars, who studied the movements of the planets and the hidden secrets of the earth, would one day encounter the same fate as the Watchers. They would be bound, trapped by the very knowledge they sought to control. It was the tragedy of mankind that it could never forget what it had learned, even when that knowledge had brought only pain. The flood had washed the world clean, but it had not washed away the thirst for power, the hunger for the forbidden knowledge the Watchers had introduced. It was a thirst that ran deep, coursing through the veins of humanity, a curse that would outlast the flood and the giants. In every whisper of the wind, and every myth and legend, the legacy of the Watchers was there. The flood may have cleansed the earth, but the hearts of men remained full of the desire for that same power. And as long as that thirst lived, the legacy of the Watchers would never be forgotten. As the years passed, the world changed, but Enoch remained steadfast, an unwavering figure in the eyes of all who knew him. He had walked the earth, a beacon of righteousness, in a time when sin had crept into the very marrow of humanity. He had lived with the knowledge of the Watchers' fall, the flood that cleansed the world, and the promise that his message would transcend the ages. But now, as his life neared its end, Enoch could feel something was different. It was as if the winds themselves whispered of a coming change, a transition unlike any other. On the final day, the air seemed to hold its breath, the silence deep and thick, as though the earth itself knew that this moment would be unlike any before it. Enoch had seen the struggles of mankind, the corrupting influence of the Watchers' knowledge, and the fleeting hope that only a few souls could hold on to. He had delivered the message, written the sacred texts, and warned humanity. His mission was complete, yet there was still something left to do, something beyond even the world he had known. He stood, alone on the mountaintop, looking out at the world below, a world he had fought so hard to help. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, a strange feeling washed over him. He had no fear. There was no pain, no regret. Only a deep, unspoken peace settled over him. It was as if everything that had come before this moment had led to this one, and now, at the very edge of life and death, something extraordinary was about to happen. And then, the earth trembled. The heavens themselves seemed to open, and a light brighter than the sun poured down upon Enoch. It wasn't just light, though, it was life itself. A presence so powerful, so overwhelming, that it felt as though every fiber of his being was being drawn toward it. His body trembled, not from fear, but from awe, as if something cosmic and incomprehensible was unfolding right before him. From the depths of that light, a voice spoke, not in words, but in a feeling, a knowing, deep inside his soul. It was as if all the stars in the heavens were speaking in unison, and the voice echoed through every inch of his being. It was God, the Creator, calling him home, telling him it was time to leave the world behind and ascend to a higher place. Enoch did not hesitate. He had always known that his life was not meant to be like others. He was not meant to simply die and return to the earth like every other mortal. His mission was greater, and so his end would be different. The heavens had long been preparing for this moment, and now the time had come. In an instant, his feet lifted from the ground, and the world he had known faded away. The earth below him, with its cities, its struggles, its sin, disappeared into the distance. Up, higher and higher, he was carried on a current of light, drawn toward something far beyond his understanding. The air was filled with the scent of flowers, fresh and sweet, and the sound of celestial music echoed all around him, an otherworldly melody that resonated deep within his chest. As Enoch rose, he saw the faces of the angels, beings of light, their eyes filled with compassion and reverence. They reached out, their hands open, guiding him forward, leading him into the heart of the heavens. The light grew brighter, and the air became richer, filled with a sense of love and peace that he had never known on earth. It was a feeling so pure, so perfect, that it filled him completely, washing away every burden he had carried. And then, before him, appeared a throne, magnificent, beyond anything he had ever seen, glowing with a radiance that outshone the stars. Upon the throne sat a figure so glorious, so powerful, that Enoch's heart skipped a beat. It was God. His presence was overwhelming, filling every corner of the vast space. But there was no fear, only an overwhelming sense of awe and peace. God's gaze met his, and in that moment, Enoch understood everything. God spoke again, not with words, but with a feeling that went straight to Enoch's heart. You have done well, my servant. Your work on earth is complete, but your mission is far from over. You will become something greater. You will be a scribe in my courts, recording the mysteries of the heavens, the wisdom of the ages, for all eternity. Your name will be Metatron, the heavenly scribe, and your voice will echo through the cosmos. Enoch's heart swelled. He had always known his life had a deeper purpose, a purpose beyond the mortal realm. Now, it was clear. He was not just a man. He was not merely a prophet. He was to be an eternal witness to the divine, a voice for God's will, an intermediary between heaven and earth. He would write the stories of the cosmos, recording the events that shaped the universe and the destiny of humanity. His words would be eternal, his purpose beyond measure. The transformation began slowly. His earthly body began to glow, the lines of age and were melting away as the divine energy coursed through him. His physical form shifted, becoming something new, something beyond the mortal. His senses heightened, and he felt the weight of all the knowledge of the universe flooding his mind. It was as if the very secrets of existence had been laid bare before him, and now he was to be their keeper. The angels surrounded him, their eyes filled with awe as his transformation took its final form. Enoch was no longer just Enoch. He had transcended that life. He had become Metatron, the voice of God. His task was now to record, to preserve, to teach, to hold the wisdom of the universe in his heart and pass it on to those who would come after. As the light around him grew even brighter, Enoch felt the finality of his earthly existence slipping away. He was not sad, nor did he fear what was to come. He was at peace, knowing that the work he had done had been meaningful, that he had fulfilled his purpose. The pain of the world, the corruption, the sin, the suffering, was no longer his burden to carry. He had given everything he could, and now he would take his place in the courts of heaven. In the final moments of his transformation, Enoch's thoughts turned to his family, to the people he had loved, to the world he had fought for. He knew they would remember him, and in their memories, his mission would live on. But now, he had a new purpose, one that would last for eternity. He was no longer just a man. He was something more, something eternal, something beyond time. With one final look at the world he had once known, Enoch, now Metatron, ascended higher, his soul intertwining with the divine light, forever changed. There is a weight to the words that prophets speak, a burden that only the most faithful can bear. Enoch, in his time, was a man who had witnessed the heavens and the earth in ways no other had. He stood at the crossroads of divine judgment and mercy, writing down what he had seen, ensuring that future generations would have a guide, a beacon to follow when the world grew dark again. His words would echo through time, carried by the winds of history, like a fire that would never go out, lighting the path for all who came after him. Though Enoch's time on earth had come to an end, his influence never truly faded. It was as if his soul had left a mark, indelible and powerful, on the world. From the moment he ascended into the heavens, his teachings and his writings took root in the hearts of those who came after him. Prophets, kings, and mystics all found in Enoch's words a depth that resonated with their own struggles, their own visions of the divine. He had set the foundation for a line of prophecy that would stretch across centuries, and his influence would be felt by all who walked the earth in search of truth. Centuries after Enoch's transformation, his name still lingered in whispered prayers and ancient texts. His words had traveled far beyond the earth he had once known, carried by those who had read his writings, absorbed his wisdom, and spread it among their people. They began to see in Enoch's prophecies not just a glimpse of the past, but an unfolding truth that stretched into the future, a warning, a promise, and a call to action for all of humanity. The ancient writings Enoch had recorded, those sacred scrolls filled with visions of the heavens and the earth, became the heart of a new kind of prophecy. They spoke of a world that would fall into darkness again, a world where humanity would once more lose its way. But they also spoke of hope, of the divine mercy that would always be available, even when the world seemed beyond saving. Enoch's teachings became a guiding light for those who saw through the surface of the world, who could feel the trembling of something greater just beneath the veil of ordinary life. As new generations emerged, the apocalyptic nature of Enoch's visions found their way into the writings of other prophets. These prophets, whether they came from distant lands or walked the streets of ancient cities, were deeply influenced by the stories Enoch had left behind. The connection between his visions and the apocalyptic literature that followed was undeniable. In their writings, they spoke of destruction, of the end of times, of the cleansing fire that would purify the earth. And just like Enoch, they spoke of a new world that would emerge from the ashes, a world where righteousness would reign. There was an urgency to their words, a desperation, as though they felt the weight of the prophecy hanging over them. They too had seen the darkness, had witnessed the corruption of humanity and the destruction it brought. And they too believed, as Enoch had, that the only way to bring about change was to speak the truth, no matter how painful, no matter how difficult. The prophets who came after Enoch carried his mantle, his torch, and they passed it on to the generations that followed. But it wasn't just the words of the prophets that carried Enoch's legacy forward. It was also the stories, the myths, and the legends that arose from the traditions he had set in motion. The tales of fallen angels, of heavenly wars, of the flood that swept away the old world, all of these found their way into the hearts and minds of the people. They became part of the collective consciousness, passed down from parent to child, from one generation to the next. And each time the story was told, it was as if Enoch's voice was speaking again, reminding humanity of its place in the vastness of the cosmos. In every culture, in every civilization, the echoes of Enoch's words resounded. The idea of divine judgment, of a reckoning that would come to all who had turned away from righteousness, found its place in the sacred texts of many nations. But so too did the promise of redemption, of a new beginning, of a world where the faithful would be rewarded. The image of the great flood, the cleansing of the earth, lived on, not just in the ancient scrolls, but in the hearts of those who believed that humanity's salvation was not lost, but always within reach, if only they would turn to the divine. Enoch's legacy was not limited to the words he had written or the prophecies he had spoken. His life, his mission, became a symbol of the enduring struggle between light and darkness, between righteousness and corruption. He had been a man who had walked the earth, but whose soul had reached beyond it, and his influence would continue to shape the world for millennia. His teachings found their way into the very fabric of the world's religious traditions. In the Old Testament, his story was woven into the lineage of the righteous, a man who had been taken by God, not through death, but through transformation. He became a figure of mystery and reverence, a bridge between the mortal and the divine. In the Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions, the echoes of his prophecies would find their place, each faith interpreting his life and mission in its own way. But the thread of his influence remained constant, unbroken through the ages. And then there were those who saw his story not as a myth, but as a truth. They believed that the secrets Enoch had written down were not just stories of the past, but keys to understanding the world that lay ahead. They believed that the prophecies Enoch had spoken of were not merely warnings, but promises of a future that was still to come, a future where the balance of good and evil would finally be restored. As centuries passed, those who followed in Enoch's footsteps continued to spread his message. His writings were studied, interpreted, and reinterpreted as they sought to uncover the deeper truths that lay hidden within them. They saw in Enoch's visions the outline of a cosmic plan, one that stretched across time, from the beginning of creation to the final day of reckoning. They knew that Enoch had glimpsed something far beyond human understanding, something that could not be ignored. Even as the world changed, as civilizations rose and fell, the prophetic line that Enoch had established remained strong. His influence was felt not just in religious circles, but in every corner of human thought. His writings became the foundation for those who sought truth, for those who yearned to understand the divine order, and for those who believed in the possibility of a better world. The legacy of Enoch would never fade. It would live on in the hearts of those who believed, in the words of those who preached, and in the eyes of those who watched the heavens for signs of the coming end. Through it all, one thing remained clear: Enoch had left behind more than just words. He had left behind a vision, a truth that could not be silenced, a legacy that would never die. In the silence of the heavens, where time seems to stretch and bend, there exists a figure watching. Not with the eyes of a mere mortal, but with a gaze that sees beyond the veil of the known world. Enoch, once a man of earth, had transcended into something more, a guardian, a sentinel, bound to the fabric of existence itself. His presence, though unseen by most, lingered in the corners of creation, ever vigilant, ever aware. It was not by accident that he had been chosen to bear witness, to stand as an eternal observer of humanity's unfolding story. He was no longer just a man, but a bridge between the mortal realm and the divine. His role, though hidden, was crucial to the very balance of the universe. From his place in the celestial expanse, Enoch's eyes did not look down only at the fleeting lives of humans, but at the forces that shaped them, those that led to their rise and their fall. He watched with a knowing heart as men and women struggled, as nations rose and crumbled under the weight of their choices. And yet, amid the chaos, his eyes were full of hope. For he knew, perhaps better than anyone, that there was always a chance for redemption, always a possibility for change, as long as the light of faith remained. The weight of his position was not one he had chosen. But once his soul had been transformed, once he had ascended beyond the mortal limits, Enoch had been given a task, a mission that stretched beyond time itself. He was no longer just the scribe who recorded the divine revelations. He was now something more, a protector and guide for humanity, a silent witness to the workings of the divine. His role as an intermediary between heaven and earth was not a simple one. It was not one that could be fully understood by the hearts of those who lived below. It was a task that required patience, a task that required seeing all things, good and bad, joy and sorrow, without ever turning away. There were times, quiet moments in the heavens, when Enoch would reflect on his mission. What had it all meant? What had been his purpose in standing watch over humanity? He knew, in the deepest parts of his soul, that he was not just an observer but an active participant in the great divine plan. He had seen the wrongs of the world, the corruption, the fall from grace. And yet, he had also witnessed moments of profound beauty, of love that could heal, of kindness that could pierce through the darkness like a single star in a black sky. Through all of this, Enoch remained a constant. The flames of the divine fire that had touched him still burned within him, guiding his every thought and action. His role as a watcher, as one who stood between two worlds, gave him the rare ability to intercede, to speak on behalf of the souls of humanity, and sometimes even on behalf of those who had fallen. He stood not as a judge, but as one who knew the depths of mercy, of second chances. His heart, though ancient, still carried the compassion of a man who had once walked the earth and seen its sorrows. He had stood with the angels, seen the heavens themselves shake, and still, he had never lost hope. But it wasn't just the past that called to him. There were hints, whispers, of his presence in the future. Times of great turmoil were always on the horizon, and humanity would need guidance once more. Enoch had been given a glimpse of the days to come, the days when the earth would groan under the weight of its sins, and when the cries of the faithful would rise up once more. In those times, his voice would not be silent. In the moments when humanity seemed lost, when it seemed as though all hope had vanished, Enoch's role would shine once more. He would stand, not in the foreground, but in the background of history, as a silent figure whose presence meant more than any words could express. It wasn't that he would be seen by many, but that his influence would still be felt. He was woven into the fabric of the world's fate in ways that no one fully understood, not even the angels. In times of strife and confusion, when divine judgment seemed on the edge of breaking through, Enoch would be there, watching, waiting, ready to intercede. He would be a reminder of the mercy that had always been a part of the divine plan, of the forgiveness that could heal even the deepest wounds. His was not a role of direct intervention, but of quiet counsel, of shaping the course of things with the subtlety of a whisper in the wind. It was during these moments, these times of trial and despair, that Enoch's presence would be felt the most. Those who still sought the light would call upon his name, and though his body no longer walked the earth, his spirit would be close. In times when humanity teetered on the brink of destruction, when the forces of darkness seemed to hold sway over the hearts of men, it was Enoch's voice that would echo, reminding them that redemption was always possible, that the divine was always listening, and that it was never too late to turn back to the light. Though his role as a celestial scribe had been fulfilled long ago, there was more to his mission than simply recording the events of the world. His writings, his teachings, had been a testament to the power of choice, the weight of human free will. And it was this same free will that he would continue to watch over, for as long as the world existed. There would be moments when humanity's choices would seem to defy all logic, when it would seem as though the world was slipping into chaos. But through it all, Enoch would remain, not as a judge, but as a witness to the resilience of the human spirit, the strength of those who fought against the darkness with all their might. His mission was a quiet one, not meant for glory or fame, but for the preservation of hope, the protection of the divine order. In the tapestry of the universe, Enoch was but a single thread, yet his influence reached far beyond what the eye could see. Even as centuries passed, as kingdoms rose and fell, his role would never cease. He would be there, always. Watching. Waiting. A quiet sentinel in the distance, guarding humanity's fragile hope, offering a prayer for those who had lost their way. Enoch had become, in his eternal vigil, a symbol of the unwavering mercy of the divine, a mercy that never faltered, never wavered, and never let go. Enoch stood at the edge of eternity, his gaze stretching across the vast expanse of the universe, watching as the ages passed in the blink of an eye. Time, as the mortals knew it, no longer mattered to him. He had seen it all, the rise and fall of empires, the cycles of joy and suffering, the flickering of human hope like a flame against the wind. But now, in the quiet after the storm, a vision unlike any he had ever known washed over him. A single, radiant light pierced through the endless dark. It wasn't a light that burned or consumed, but one that healed and restored. Enoch felt it deep within his being, every fiber of his soul responding to it, as if it were not just a vision but a living promise. His heart, ancient and full of memories, swelled with a joy so profound it threatened to overwhelm him. This was the moment. This was the culmination of all the pain, all the struggle. The end of darkness and the beginning of something truly beautiful. In that radiant light, Enoch saw the world he had always longed for, a world where good triumphed over evil, where love reigned instead of fear, where humanity, broken and battered, was healed and made whole. The earth, once scarred by sin and violence, was now bathed in light so pure that it seemed as though the very air was alive, pulsing with new life. The trees stretched their branches toward the sky, blooming with colors that Enoch had never imagined. The rivers flowed with waters so clear, they sparkled like diamonds. The sky was a deep, endless blue, with no hint of storm or shadow. And in that moment, Enoch knew this was the future. The future humanity had always been meant for, the one they could never quite reach until now. He saw it all, men and women, young and old, walking together in peace, their faces glowing with joy and contentment. There were no wars, no divisions. Only unity, harmony, and love. The fear that had once plagued the hearts of every living being had vanished, replaced by a deep and lasting peace. Children played in fields of golden light, their laughter echoing like music in the air. Enoch saw families reunited, friendships rekindled, and the bonds of humanity stronger than ever before. The people, once torn apart by greed, hatred, and sin, now stood together as one, united under the banner of a love that could not be broken. And as Enoch looked upon this scene of perfect peace, he realized that this wasn't just the renewal of the earth, but the renewal of humanity's soul. The brokenness, the wounds of the past, had been healed. The mistakes, the regrets, the sins that had weighed so heavily on the hearts of mankind, all of it was gone. The bitterness that had once taken root in the hearts of men had been replaced by a profound and unshakable hope. A hope that transcended the boundaries of time and space, a hope that filled every heart with the certainty that the darkness was over and the light had come to stay. In the vision, the heavens themselves seemed to rejoice. The stars, which had once burned with cold indifference, now danced across the sky, filling the vast expanse with a symphony of light. The angels, those ancient beings who had watched over humanity since the dawn of time, sang songs of praise so beautiful that the very heavens themselves trembled. The celestial hosts, once silent and distant, now moved as one, in perfect harmony with the earth below. And then, amidst all this beauty, Enoch saw something even more astonishing. He saw the face of God. Not in wrath, not in judgment, but in love, in a deep and abiding compassion that enveloped everything. God's gaze, steady and full of mercy, swept over the earth, and Enoch knew that this was the moment humanity had always longed for. The moment when the Creator, with infinite grace, would draw close to His creation, and every heart would feel His love. Enoch saw humanity's return to the divine harmony it had once known in the Garden of Eden, a harmony that had been lost but was now restored. It was as though the earth itself had become a reflection of the heavens, and the heavens, in turn, had embraced the earth. The vision stretched on, and Enoch understood with a clarity that filled his heart with both awe and peace. This was the fulfillment of the divine promise. This was the end of the long, painful road humanity had walked, and the beginning of an eternity of joy and fulfillment. The struggle, the suffering, the darkness, it was all a distant memory now, swallowed by the light of love and divine grace. Humanity, at last, had found its way home. As the vision began to fade, Enoch felt the weight of it sink into his soul, a weight that was not heavy but filled with a deep, quiet satisfaction. His role as a watcher, as a scribe, as an intercessor, it had all led to this. He had seen the mistakes, the corruption, the consequences of human choices. But he had also seen the hope, the potential for redemption, the power of a heart turned back toward the divine. And now, in this final moment, he understood the full extent of his mission. His task had never been about preventing the darkness. It had been about preserving the light. The light that could always break through, no matter how thick the darkness grew. The light that would guide humanity back to its true home. As the last flicker of the vision dimmed, Enoch's heart still burned with the memory of it. The vision of the earth, renewed and restored, would stay with him forever. It was not just a dream, it was a promise. A promise that the battle between good and evil, between light and darkness, would not end in defeat. It would end in victory. Humanity's return to divine harmony was not just a hope, it was a certainty. A future already written in the stars. Enoch's life had been a testament to that promise. And now, as the final chapter of his own journey drew near, he knew that the story was far from over. In the silence that followed, a deep, lasting peace settled over him. A peace that would never fade, for the victory of light over darkness had been secured, and the earth, though scarred by its past, was now whole. The divine vision had been fulfilled. The world, in all its beauty and grace, had been reborn. And humanity, at last, had found its way home.